The flickering light of Asia, or the Assyrian nation and church. The Persian Mohammedans, still impatient and still persistent in their plan for the destruction of the Christians, and fully conscious of their own inability to put into execution their murderous scheme. Even after the assassination of Mashmun bin Yamin, they replied now, upon an invasion in force by the Turks. They had secretly urged the latter to enter into Persia, with the understanding of either establishing a free Ursian Azerbaijan state, or if possible, to annex this Ardar province of Persia to the remaining portions of the Turkish Empire. With the fall of the imperial government of Russia, which had been the only ambling bloc to the Turkish aspirations toward Afghanistan and India, and which had also been the bitterest enemy of the Turks and their religion, the proposition of the Azerbaijan Muslims appealed to the commander of the Turkish forces, and as the Turkish arms had already been defeated by smaller numbers of the Assyrian troops, the Turks set in motion toward the Persian frontier overwhelmingly superior forces, with the sole purpose of eliminating from the field of battle this sore spot under the wing of their eastern armies. That the Turks started on a campaign of murder and massacre, it became apparent from the encircling movement of their forces, as well as from their revolting conduct toward the Christians during the last exodus of the Assyrians from Urmia. The appearance of the Turks in this campaign of extermination and occupation took place on April 8, 1918, while their main army was moving from the north and northwest. They sent some of their regiments equipped with several batteries of artillery to knock at the gates of Urmia from the south and southwest. These Turkish columns had assumed the form of an avalanche. They had gathered additional and strong forces in their progress through a Muslim country. The Kurds of Sheikh Abdul Qadir, who had fled from before the Assyrians during the latter's campaign against them, had now returned as a part of the invading army, and the Karapapag horsemen, also of Soldus, had united with the Turkish troops moving from the south. It took the Assyrians less than a week to eliminate the wing of the enemy's armies from ever being regarded as a source of serious danger to them. On the 13th day of April, the Assyrian troops, having utterly crushed the enemy, returned to the north of Urmia, where the greatest danger from the Turks lay. The preparations for this eventuality were still going on, when like an unexpected cyclone, the Turks appeared immediately west of Urmia, the valleys leading in a westerly direction from the Persian frontier into the interior of eastern Kurdistan, over which the Kurds had always moved in their expeditions of plunder into Persia. A possible appearance, therefore, of the broken fragments of these nomad tribes was always anticipated by the Assyrians, but never considered as a serious menace by them. Hence, they had almost utterly ignored the possibility of a Turkish movement in force across the hazardous mountains, which tie with each other either by the high altitudes or by the ruggedness of their steep slopes. The Turks had sprung a surprise which was to be returned by a greater surprise soon to be witnessed by them. The position of the Assyrians came little short of being precarious at first. General Aga Petros saw that he was being caught between two millstones of the Turkish armies, but he never lost his courage. The generals Malik Khoshaba and Malik Ismail, the two fearless lions of Tiari, with their equally fearless warriors, suggested an immediate attack upon the Turks, whose shells were now exploding in the vicinity of Urmia. Aga Petros, however, decided first to feel the mood and, if possible, the full strength also of the Turks before making an attack. He wrote a letter to Khairi Beg, the commanding general of the Turkish forces, telling him, "We are not a kingdom or a government that you should fight against us, and why should we be compelled to defend ourselves when most of us by right belong to Turkey? We are ready to make peace with you, provided our safety is guaranteed to us." Khairi Beg replied abruptly, saying, "Deliver to us all your arms, we will take Urmia and we will protect you there." Aga Petros, still desirous to ascertain the exact position of the enemy, wrote again to Khairi Beg, saying, "We are willing to surrender our arms, but we will do so on two conditions. First, we desire a written assurance that you will annex the province of Azerbaijan to Turkey, and second, that you will give us food and provisions that last us for at least 3 months, till we have returned to our homes and settled in our lands." Khairi Beg replied haughtily, again by saying, "There is one condition only: all Christians must unconditionally surrender." The exact positions of the Turks were now fully ascertained. They were moving along the valley through which Baranduz River twists its zigzag course toward the Lake of Urmia. Again, Aga Petros sent a force to face the Turks and to draw them further into the valley, while he himself, together with Malik Khoshaba and Malik Ismail and the warriors of Tiari, moved by another route and planted themselves so that they would fall in the rear of the advancing enemy. In the early morning of May 5th, the Turks opened the hostilities by a rain of shells. Their commanding general had sent word that at noon of the same day he would eat his dinner in Urmia. His army, therefore, was moving rapidly on, and when they had come within the range of the machine guns, hid in the bushes and behind the rocks of the sloping hills, the Assyrians sprung with their greater surprise. The Turkish army melted away. Its remaining officers, 24 in number, did eat their dinner in Urmia, but only as the prisoners of war. It became evident that the strength of the enemy had been deliberately exaggerated by Muslim reporters so as to cause consternation among the Assyrians. Instead of being 16,000, a previously reported, it was an army of less than 16,000 men. But against these, Agha Petros had engaged less than 1,200 of his troops. The entire equipment of the Turks was captured together with their mountain cannon. Their wounded, together with prisoners, were brought to Urmia, and the former placed in hospitals and taken Christian care. The brute who had arrogantly demanded the unconditional surrender of the Christians had now himself surrendered to the amazing valor and to the mercies of the Christians. The Assyrians were after this war nicknamed by the Turks as the Little Germany, and indeed the impressions of that nickname remained with the Muslims to the present day. Relying on the certain of the Turkish successes, the bloodthirsty Muslims of Urmia had again made elaborate preparations to plunder what was left of the goods and the possessions of the Assyrians, and then to participate with the victorious Turks in the meritorious deeds of a general massacre. They had secretly and almost one by one departed from the city and assembled near the Persian border. They had chosen for their rendezvous the large town of Askarabad, famous for its ancient fortifications over which rose up 24 gigantic towers, and all enclosed within the walls of solid masonry. In the ancient days of warfare, the place was regarded as impregnable, and it was certainly the strongest fortress of Persia on this line of its western boundary. The Muslims had also secretly brought arms and ammunition to the Turkish camps, the movements and the whereabouts of which they always knew. The Assyrians became aware of the plot and had already decided to leave no armed foe behind when they were to challenge the strong forces of Turkey. In one decisive battle, the Muslims, who had been enforced by a large number of the Kurds, had repaired to the defense of the fortifications. The Assyrian general sent against them one small cannon, together with 3 companies of troops. Word was sent to the beset enemy to surrender. The latter refused, not knowing the extent of the Turkish disastrous defeat in the vicinity of Urmia. It was soon discovered that the small shells would make no serious impression on the walls, and the cannon was planted against one of the gates of fortifications. Special precautions were taken not to hurt the Muslim population of the town, who had been urging the defenders to give up their arms and surrender to the Christians. As the gate was being shot into fragments, Malik Khoshaba led the attack in person. Some of his men had bought ladders from the town in a rain of flying bullets, before which some 30 Assyrians dropped dead and wounded. The walls were scaled. The enemy through another gate attempted to flee, but was confronted by the fire of the machine guns already planted for his reception. And yet these Muslims, like the Egyptians of Pharaoh, became hardened more still.